In Venezuela, citizens mobilized in support of Nicolas Maduro's government and to reject the far-right's conspiratorial actions. In Haiti, the security crisis affecting the nation continues to aggravate with violent paramilitary groups controlling over 80% of the capital. And the Israeli military forces raid Khan Yunis in southern Gaza as hundreds of thousands are forced to move yet again. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Venezuela, citizens mobilized in support of the government of Nicolas Maduro and in rejection of the conspiratorial actions of sectors of the extreme right. The leadership of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela announced this mobilization as the first stage of the Bolivarian Fury plan and that they will have a series of marches starting this Tuesday and will continue until February 4th. Some spokesmen revealed that the mobilization is nationwide, and in the city of Caracas it will start from the east zone to the center of the capital. They also explained that the mobilization will be so that there will be no more betrayals to the people, but also in rejection to the COP, to terrorism, to violence, to Guarimba, and for the peace of all the Venezuelans. In Venezuela, they commemorate 66 years of the fall of the dictatorship of General Pérez Jiménez and to vindicate the martyrs of that memorable feat. The fall of the dictatorship was the result of the union of the people and the military leaders of the time, who rose up against the government of Marco Pérez Jiménez, against liberalism, against the violation of human rights, and to recover the country's democracy. After the overthrow of the military dictatorship, every January 23rd since 1958 is commemorated as the Day of Democracy, a day that marks the history and the political and social identity of the Venezuelan people. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro denounced on Monday that some sectors of the opposition seek to promote scenarios of violence and uncertainty in the country. The accusation was made during the president's TV program Con Maduro Más, where the head of the state stressed that the objective is to blame him for the violent incidents created. Maduro said those sectors are betting on a coup d'etat to jump to power and generate violence, that they also bet on assassination and economic and psychological warfares to create chaos and make people desperate. The Bolivarian leader reiterated that the people knew who the true responsible for the sanctions were and who the criminals that have attacked the stability of the economy and the country were, and highlighted the revolutionary character of the Venezuelans. The president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, affirmed that the arrival of the Southern Command in Ecuador will bring much more violence to the country.
I have said with much respect to President Noboa, do not open the doors of your country to the devil. Tell me, President Noboa, people of Ecuador, a single country in the world where the United States have helped to stabilize. Take Colombia as an example. After 30 years of Plan Colombia, Colombia has more peace or has less peace? Colombia has more mafia or less mafia? Colombia has more drug trafficking or less drug trafficking? Where the United States arrives, chaos prevails. I tell you, it will not be the South Command President Noboa ever who will bring peace and true security with full respect to the Constitution of the Ecuadorian people. It will not be. It is a blunder to take that step. I have modestly tell you, if you want to talk President Noboa, if you want to talk to me, and I can tell you how Venezuela, with the Venezuelan national doctrine, with its own forces, with its own effort, without the DEA, without the North American military mission that would kick them out of Venezuela, Venezuela has built the basis for a new security, respecting the people, without repression.
The Venezuelan head of state, Nicolas Maduro, lamented the death of Colombian Senator Piedad Córdoba and highlighted her important work in her country's politics.
Piedad was a great friend of Venezuela, of Commander Chavez, and a great friend of mine, and of Celia, a great companion. a great friend of the house, I can say, who suffered all the persecution, dirty campaigns for being the first black woman leader that emerged in the Colombian political panorama, who arrived to Congress with a brave voice. He was kidnapped and almost assassinated by the paramilitaries of Castaño. Persecuted, he was subjected to many attacks and permanent campaign in the media, and now in the networks against her moral. President Petro said something that really moved me. He said, "The body and mind of Piedad could not stand so much persecution. She left us all of a sudden."
The Ecuadorian government held a meeting with U.S. authorities under the pretext of addressing the internal armed conflict in the country. This Monday, President Daniel Noboa met in the city of Quito with U.S. Senators Christopher Dodd and General Laura Richardson. The meeting was also attended by the Ecuadorian Foreign Minister Gabriela Sommerfeld and the Ministers of the Security Axis. A statement issued by the Ecuadorian presidency explains that both parties agreed to increase cooperation in security and defense. Analysts and social organizations warned that the security crisis that Ecuador is going through and the declaration of an internal armed conflict could be an opportunity for the United States to increase its military presence and sale of armament to the South American country.
We have just had the meeting with the authorities coming from the United States, and it is a motive of satisfaction to be able to receive the visit of the Special Envoy for the Americas, of President Joseph Biden, Christopher Dodd, and the Commander of the United States Southern Command, General Laura Richardson. The presence of these high authorities in Ecuador is a powerful and concrete political signal of support from the United States to the management of President Daniel Noboa in the non-international armed conflict against terrorism.
In the past days, Haiti's security crisis has worsened with violent paramilitary groups controlling over 80% of the nation's capital. Last Friday, armed men in Port-au-Prince raided a key community that is home to numerous police officers and has been under siege for several days and in a continuing attack, with residents fearful of the violence spreading throughout the city. Also on Friday, armed groups kidnapped 6 nuns in the center of the Haitian capital and have demanded the payment of $3 million as ransom, after Pope Francis himself asked for the release of the nuns and the other 2 people captured. To date, hundreds of thousands have been displaced from their neighborhoods and are internal refugees forced to live in stadiums, schools, or public squares. In this context, thousands of Haitians have taken to the streets to protest against the government of Ariel Henry due to the serious humanitarian situation that the country is going through. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. On Monday in Mexico, the Secretary of Foreign Affairs, Alisa, called for an investigation into the entry to Mexican territory of weapons of exclusive use of the United States military. Meanwhile, the government of Andrés Manuel López Obrador has already filed 2 lawsuits against U.S. firearms manufacturers and distributors. For his part, the United States ambassador to Mexico, Ken Salazar, declared that the White House seeks to combat the flow of arms, and that they are aware that 70% of the arms that enter Mexico are linked to U.S. producers. According to official data, more than 500,000 arms are trafficked annually from the United States to Mexico.
There is one very important thing, and that is that the Department of Defense has warned the United States about the entry of weapons into Mexico that are for the exclusive use of the U.S. military. It is very urgent that an investigation is carried out.
In this context, Mexican Secretary of Foreign Affairs Alisa, through her account in the social network X, referred to a favorable ruling for Mexico in relation to arms trafficking to her country from the United States. In this sense, Bárcena pointed out that the Court of Appeals of the First Circuit of the United States ruled in favor of Mexico in its lawsuit against arms manufacturers, which allows her government to sue the U.S. arms manufacturers. In this regard, Secretary of Foreign Affairs Alisa Bárcena described the decision as a great news. In Argentina, there are only a few hours left for the first national general strike against the administration of President Javier Milei, and the confrontations between the government and the union leaders are getting hotter. The leader of the General Confederation of Labor, CGT, Pablo Moyano, replied to the Minister of Security, Patricia Bullrich, that the march to the Congress on January 24th will be uncontrollable due to the number of mobilized workers. With this statement, the leader of the CGT warned the government that nobody will run the workers with fines or with military forces. Then, the President Javier Milei assured that those who call for the protest defend what he called a populist model that generated a country with 50% of poor people and 10% of indigents. The Central of Workers in Argentina replied to Milei that his omnibus law repeats the failed recipes of the dictatorship, the 90s neoliberalism, and the Macri administration. In this context, the Argentine government will send to the Congress a bill to reintroduce the country's income tax. The measure will be called personal income tax and will contemplate a non-taxable minimum of $1,350,000, which will also be adjusted on a quarterly basis through the Consumer Price Index. The bill contemplates that the executive power will retain the power to modify the amounts of scales so that at least 800,000 people will have to pay the tax again. This type of proposals cause alerts in workers' unions, who assure that the bill damages the workers' rights. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news, coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. To stay connected and informed with teleSUR, final short break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. In Palestine, at least 195 civilians were killed by the Israeli occupation forces during the last 24 hours in the Gaza Strip. According to the Gaza Health Ministry, these assassinations took place during 22 massacres perpetrated by troops of the Tel Aviv regime in the last 24 hours, most of them in the city of Khan Yunis, where the Zionist army is concentrated in its offensive and is holding the two main hospitals in the area, Nasser and Al-Amal, under siege. According to the health authority, these acts also left 354 wounded, while warning that these figures could be even higher since numerous victims are still under the rubble. According to the latest count by the Gaza Health Ministry, 25,490 Palestinians have been killed by Israel since October. Meanwhile, the situation in Gaza continues to deteriorate for the Palestinians. The Palestinian Health Ministry has reported 200 dead so far as the Israeli attacks continue. Our teleSUR correspondent Noor Harassen with the details.
In its latest statement, the Palestinian Health Ministry said that more than
200 people were killed in the Gaza Strip today. Most of them were killed actually in the city of Khan Yunis due to the very heavy Israeli attacks on eastern Khan Yunis and also central Khan Yunis. However, shortly after that statement, the Palestinian Health Ministry reported that 12 more bodies were found in the streets of Khan Yunis, adding the fact that there is still dozens of people their bodies are thrown in the streets or still stuck under the rubble of their destroyed homes that were not evacuated, and that's why their numbers were not added to the daily casualties of the day. This is the situation here in Gaza, as more Palestinians who were firstly displaced to Khan Yunis are now fleeing again. Actually, some people have evacuated twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, running for their safety as Israel continued to strike green areas, places where they asked Palestinians to evacuate to. Meanwhile, the humanitarian situation here in Gaza is deteriorating as Palestinians have very little to live with. The winter is also biting very hard on the Palestinians here in Gaza, as most of the displaced people are actually living in tents, in plastic and wooden tents that would not even protect them from the winter or the cold. Nur Harazin, teleSUR, Gaza.
Yemen was attacked by a new round of missiles launched by United States and United Kingdom fighter jets and ships. In a statement, the British government reported that on Monday night, 4 Royal Air Force Typhoons, supported by a pair of Voyage tankers, joined U.S. forces in a deliberate attack on Houthi locations. The note details that the strikes, which were supported by Australia, Bahrain, Canada and the Netherlands, targeted 8 targets in the Arab country. The offensive comes after the Houthis claimed on Monday to have attacked the U.S. military cargo ship Ocean Jazz in the Gulf of Aden. The joint operation comes about 10 days after U.S. and British warships and fighter jets struck more than 60 targets in 28 locations. That was the first U.S. military attack to what has been a response to Houthi drones and missile attacks on commercial ships since the start of the Israel-Hamas conflict in October. For his part, a leader of the popular Ansar Allah movement assured that Yemen will continue to support the Palestinian people and that they will not give in to these attacks of the United States and the United Kingdom. Through his account on social network X, Mohammed al-Bukaiti, one of the members of Ansar Allah political bureau in Yemen, stressed that the American and British airstrikes are now on Sana'a. He also highlighted that no matter how much they bomb, their military operations against Israel will continue until they put an end to the crimes of genocide in Gaza and allow the entry of food, medicine and fuel to its besieged population. In Cameroon, authorities launched the first systematic childhood vaccination campaign against malaria. This is the world's first routine childhood malaria vaccination campaign and is expected to be extended this year to some 20 African countries. Children in 42 districts of Cameroon will receive the vaccine after it has been successfully tested in pilot programs in Kenya, Ghana, and Malawi between 2019 and 2023. 95% of malaria cases occur in Africa each year, as well as 96% of death, and Cameroon is one of the most affected countries. In France, farmers maintain protests demanding better working conditions amid promised answers from the government. The farmers blocked highways and roads with tractors in several points of the country. The movement affirmed that it will maintain the actions throughout the week and for as long as necessary, while they wait for the demands to be met. Prime Minister Gabriel Attal promised quick answers and that have not yet been received by the farmers. The mobilized farmers denounced the impact of inflation on their daily work, the low salaries, the environmental norms that they consider very severe, and the increase in the cost of fuel. In Germany, railway workers announced an extension of the general strike to demand better wages and other labor rights amid a scenario of confrontation. This is the fourth strike in the current wage dispute, which is called to begin at 6 p.m. local time this Tuesday and is expected to last until Monday, January 29th. The mobilized workers reiterate their demand for better wage conditions, considering insufficient the proposals received from the railway companies, in which they were offered the option of 1 hour less work for drivers and train attendants as from the beginning of 2026, as well as 4.8% increase in salary as from August and another 5% as of April 2025. In addition to the wage increases, the workers are demanding a reduction in working hours from 38 to 35 hours a week, with no reduction in pay, something Deutsche Bahn has so far refused to do so. We remain in Germany, where at least 10,000 jobs in the construction sector could be cut amid the energy crisis. The Industrial Construction Association affirms that this is the first time that the reduction of personnel will be significant since the international financial crisis of 2008, in which more than 700,000 workers lost their jobs. The organization points out, among other causes of this situation, the drop in income for housing construction and the reduction of purchasing power. On the other hand, the increase in energy prices as part of the measures implemented by the government to face the current economic crisis. In this context, citizens took to the streets in protest against the actions of the extreme right wing, led by the ultra-conservative party Alternative for Germany. The news unleashed criticisms and discontent among the citizens after the possible deportation of some migrants with German citizenship was revealed. Finally, local media reported that at least 100,000 people in the cities of Frankfurt, Hanover and Dortmund mobilized in favor of democracy in the country and rejected the attacks of the far right. We have come to the end of this youth brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media, Facebook, XT, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.